Hey there nation, and welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander Chieftain, and today we're actually taking a little bit of a different approach with our videos today. Today we're talking about a new post that was put up on the Warhammer community page specifically for those who play Necromunda. The headline for this one is "Pack Your Biggest Fly Swatter, It's an Ashwing Helamites Summer on Necromunda." So this is actually published on the 28th of July of 2025, and in this post they actually revealed the brand new the Ashwing Helamites that are available for your gangs of Ashwaste Nomads for your campaigns of Necromunda. They actually talked about these guys, and they actually talked about the latest supplement, the Tribes of the Wasteland. They actually talked about these as an exotic beast option that you can take for your players. So today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the information that they revealed so far, as well as take a look at the miniatures. And specifically in this video, I'll talk about exactly what the characteristics and the skills that these miniatures actually have on the tabletop and how best to use them on the tabletop as well. Now, because this video will be a little more of a deeper dive, I will put timestamps in the description box down below so that we can click and navigate to the part of the video that interests you the most. So that being said, let's go ahead and talk about the Ashwing Helamites and how you can use them in your campaigns. Alright, so let's go and talk about the article real fast. It says, "Pack your biggest fly swatter as an Ashwing Helamite summer on Necromunda." It reads, "The Ashways in Necromunda are a lonely place. Inclement weather can shear skin from bone, radioactive dunes induce the worst travel sickness in the galaxy, and gangs of hooligans hoot and holler across the deserts fighting and running battles in ramshackle vehicles. A pet makes anything better, as companionship is key to positive mental attitude. The Ashways nomads know this better than any, having domesticated all sorts of grievously mutated megafauna to accompany them in their travels. We've met the Dustback Helamites, the Arthurmite Dunesculler, and even the adorable Arthurmite Spineworms, and buzzing above us right now are the Ashwing Helamites." So as you can see, this is the picture of what they look like. Grotesquely looking giant, I guess, dragonfly killer animals with like canisters. It looks really, really cool, by the way. It reads, "The nomads use them as guard creatures for their claims and camps. Smaller and less docile than the Dustbacks used as mounts, these macro insects are controlled using lures thrown by their handlers. Ashwing swarms around them, biting trespassers with their toxic mandibles, and no amount of bug spray will ward them away. Make sure to pack the heavy fly swatter if you plan on trifling with them." These, right off the bat, these miniatures are absolutely beautiful. I mean, I like the way that they have like the veins inside the wings and stuff. They look just appropriately creepy. They got multiple legs like dragonflies, as well as they got these huge mandibles. They also got these big stingers in the miniatures as well, which is actually kind of tragic because even though they have these really predominant stingers on their bodies, they're not actually used in the rules. The only thing they actually have in the rules to attack with are their toxic mandibles, which is kind of a waste because I can imagine these things kind of flying at you and slicing off limbs and heads and stabbing people with those stingers. But c'est la vie. These miniatures look absolutely fantastic. I love the way that they look as well. They have these neat little like yellow nodules there on their body, which kind of reminds me of some of the the Malstrain Gene Stealers that you see from Hive Secundus, which is actually kind of cool, and plus a little token for the lure, which is kind of nice around them as well. So overall, these miniatures are very beautiful. I think they're really nice as well. And of course, the nice thing about this kit too is not only do you get the bugs as well as a lure template, but you also get a template for your fighters as well. So let's go ahead and talk about this. It says you get 2 Ashwing Helamites in the box, as well as a token for the lure, and an optional head and sky mantle complete with Ashwing lure to mark one of your nomads out as their handler. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in detail about their handlers, but just suffice to say, you have to assign a fighter to be the handler of these Ashwing Helamites. What's kind of cool about this, you got like this neat little thematic looking headdress that looks kind of cool. Plus I love the sky mantle with the lure down here as well. It looks really neat. It's like a canister, and I'm not sure what's inside of the canister or not. It looks like it's some kind of egg looking thing, so it could be that you throw like an Ashwing Helamite egg out there and they protect it because it's part of their hive. I'm not really sure, but it looks quite cool. We'll talk about a little bit more about the handler and how to use that in your games of Necromunda as well. Lastly, it says you get 2 Ashwing Helamites in the box with a token for the lure as an optional head and sky mantle complete with this Ashwing lure to mark out one of your nomads as a handler. And this classic kit allows you to place the Ashwings on scenic base toppers, and it also includes flying stands for your choice of poses. You can find the rules in Necromunda Tribes of the Wasteland. That's kind of nice, actually, the fact they give you both just like a normal stand as well, the flight stand like this, as well as these scenic ones as well, because you're allowed to have like up to 2 of these guys per fighter that can take them in your gang. So if you wanted to, you could actually have 2 of them be like the little ones crawling on the ground, and then the other 2 you could put on top of flying bases, which is kind of nice. It's also a nice way for constructor miniatures as well, because I know a lot of players hate putting miniatures on these flight stands. It's really hard to do so for a lot of players, so these actually might be a little bit more economical for people, but I'm glad they gave you a choice between the two, which is kind of nice for you to see that as well. The only downside, of course, is that this will probably be expensive. I'm probably thinking around anywhere between $40 to $60 for this, is what I imagine they'll probably do for this kit. So that's the only downside of it. I do like the idea, though. I think I've heard somewhere online that these are actually made out of plastic, they're not the forge roll resin, so maybe it might be a little bit cheaper, not as brittle, but I'll have to wait to see exactly what this product looks like when it does come out. It is going to be quite expensive to get these. However, though, if you are worried about that, your boy Commander Cheapskate, don't worry, he's got you covered. Later on in this video, I'll show you some cheaper examples that you could use in order to use alternatives if you're looking for cheaper alternatives to these miniatures and achieve exactly the same kind of results you want on the tabletop. But we'll talk about that a little more in detail. So this is a really informative article. I'm really glad that Games Workshop is bringing out new stuff for Necromunda. I mean, as you can see here on the sidebar, we have a lot of stuff coming out for Helamite Enforcers here pretty soon, which is super exciting. I'm just really excited to see exactly what they do with Helamite Enforcers. Just a really fun gang to play, but it's nice to see that they're breaking new stuff for Ashwing Nomads as well. So now that we're done talking about exactly what you can do with these characters and what this article is about, let's go and talk about exactly what the rules look like for the Ashwing Helamites, as well as your handlers, and how you best can use them in your games of Necromunda. We're going to talk about that next. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about the Ashwing Helamite in terms of its rules. So you can have 0 to 2 of these for exotic beasts for the fighters who are able to take them. They cost 30 credits apiece. For the characteristics, they have an 8-inch wound allowance, a 4+ weapon skill, 6+ ballistic skill, 3 strength and toughness, 1 wound, 2 initiative, 1 attack. They have 9+ leadership, 8+ cool, 9+ willpower, as well as 10+ intelligence. Now the nice thing about these characters, of course, is they have multiple special rules attached to them. One of the special rules that they have is called Flight. It says Ashwing Helamite ignores all terrain, may move freely between levels without restriction, and can never fall. It may not, however, ignore impassable terrain and may not end its movement with its base overlapping on an obstacle or another fighter's base. So with that 8-inch moon allowance, this thing's going to be able to move very rapidly across vertical spaces and 3-dimensional battlefields, as well as just a straight line as well. Go up to 16 inches in one single activation if necessary, and it can really knock down a lot of things as well. Now, while its characteristics may not seem all that impressive, it does have a 4 weapon skill, which is quite good, and you could also have that 1 attack, and when combined with this Toxin Mandible, it could actually put some really damage to your enemies. And for 30 credits a piece, they're pretty much cheaper than Dust Runners, which is actually quite nice as well. Now, there is one restriction, however, when it comes to their flight characteristic, and that is a long leash rule. It says, unlike other exotic beasts, an Ashwing Helamite must always try to remain within 9 inches of its owner rather than the usual 3 inches. So that is kind of a little bit of a hindrance for that. So because of that, you want to make sure that either one of two things, either one, the lure is within distance, or the handler's in distance. That way you can actually take advantage of those long range wound allowance for that character, for the Ashwing Helamites. So continuing on the rules for the Ashwing Helamite, we also have the Ashwing Lure, and it says an Ashwing Helamite's owner may perform the deploy lure basic action. The deploy lure basic action reads that place an Ashwing Lure in base contact with this fighter. For the remainder of the battle, any Ashwing Helamites this fighter controls treat the Ashwing Lure as if it were their owner. The Ashwing Lure may be moved as it were a loot casket and may not be targeted by attacks. Once an Ashwing Lure has been placed upon the battlefield, all Ashwing Helamites controls may be activated as a single group activation. So that part is quite nice, because when you deploy that lure, it actually acts as a group activation for all the Dustback Ashwing Helamites that are attached to it, which is kind of nice. That way you can actually activate twice with your fighters and have your bugs attack people as well. Now for its attack, it has a single attack that it can use, which is its Toxic Mandibles. And Toxic Mandibles is a melee attack with -1 AP, and it has the Toxin trait. Now for those of you guys who are unfamiliar with the Toxin trait, what you do is you roll a d6. If the result is equal to or higher than the target's toughness, or if it's a natural 6, your enemy must make an injury roll regardless of the number of wounds they might have. So it's a great way to take out multiple wound enemies, especially if they're between 3 to 4 toughness in most cases. If it's lower than their toughness, though, it doesn't do anything, and plus it doesn't have any effects on vehicles whatsoever. So now that we're going to talk about the rules of the Ashwing Helamite, let's talk about exactly how you would utilize this in your games of Necromunda, and how Ashwing Nomads would best use them on the tabletop. Now, the real use for these guys, in my opinion, is aside from just usual standard exotic beast shenanigans with supporting attacks and causing hindrance to your enemies, the real reason why you want to use these guys is because of that deploy lure basic action that you can use for your handlers, because it's really good for doing a couple of things. You can actually use this lure to either, one, lock down objectives of some sort so that your opponents can't take it, because then they got to fight the Ashwing Helamites and take them out of action in order for them to seize that objective, or two, using it to expose some kind of flank of some sort. So let's play, for example, example, you're playing inside of, I don't know, a Zone Mortalis table. Maybe you don't have enough fighters in order to protect all of your defensive positions. Well, you could use this in order to lock down a flank that might be exposed by your enemies who might try to expose that to do that to you. Or you could use it to lock down some other piece of key terrain or key feature on the tabletop that you could use to play to your advantage. And that, in my opinion, is the real secret sauce when using Ashwing Helamites. I mean, they're great for causing problems for enemies, but you really want to use them, though, to lock down places on the tabletop and deny that access to your enemies. And for me, I think that's the best way that Ashwing Helamites actually shine. Now, the thing you got to worry about, of course, is that these things are all great and all, but you got to find somebody to bring on the battlefield because they need a handler. And we're going to talk about exactly which fighters in your gang can be that handler for your Ashwing Helamites. Alright, so basically the only fighters in your gang that can take Ashwing Helamites and be a handler are either your Chieftains, which is your leaders of course, your Watchers, which is one of your champions, or your Stormcallers. Chieftains, Watchers, and Stormcallers, they can actually take anywhere between 0 to 2 of these guys at any one time, so you could cost up to 60 credits to purchase both of them and use them on the tabletop. Unfortunately, you cannot use one of your Warriors or your Dust Runners to be a handler, although in my opinion that'd be really great if they could be able to do that, because ideally that'd be the best way to actually use them, is have some warrior who actually acts as an Ashwing handler for your tribe, but unfortunately that option is not available for you. So you will have to figure out which one you want to use for your gang to handle these things, either your Chieftain, your Watcher, or your Stormcaller. Now, if you're unsure of how to utilize those in your gang, not to worry, I'm going to talk about exactly 3 different characters I made for examples of how you could use these Ashwing Helamites to great effect for your Chieftains, your Watchers, as well as your Stormcallers. So first example how you could use this, I like to call this character Lord of Mandibles. It is a Katragi Chieftain Ashwing Handler that costs 350 credits. This guy's got mesh armor for 5 armor save, as well as a web gun, because web guns are just absolutely fantastic. Template weapons, high strength, they put people out of action. You can take people out of action as well with coup de grace when they're passed out. Plus it's silent, there's no armor saves. Web guns are the pwn. Now we're giving this guy a long blade for a backup weapon, so that way he can defend himself in close combat. And of course this guy automatically comes with ash cloaks as well as sky mantles, which is quite nice. And we're also checking out 60 credits to purchase 2 Ashwing Helamites for this fighter as well, and we're using the infiltrate skill for this character from their primary skill tree. And the reason why we're doing that is so that way this guy can pop up anywhere on the battlefield to engage your targets and to attack them with that web gun. At the same time, you could also use this character to infiltrate to maybe a critical piece of terrain on the tabletop, or maybe an objective you gotta seize. They could then deploy that lure in order to protect it by using those Ashwings to do so, and then of course you could just defend that location using your web gun and your long blade in order to do so. The only downside to this, of course, is that this character is quite expensive at 350 credits, so if you're playing in something like the Aranthian Succession, for example, this would be a good way to kit out your leader if you wanted your leader to be your Ashwing Helamite handler for your gang. So the next character I would recommend is what I call the Droning Horde. This is going to be one of your Watchers, which is one of your champions for your gang. It's going to be Ashwing Handlers that will cost you 220 credits. More often than not, this is probably the route you're probably going to go with your Ashwing Helamite handler. Now, these guys have mesh armor for 5 armor save. We're giving this character blast pistol, that way they have shock trait on their pistols. So later on as well, we can also get the upgrade where they can actually wound enemy vehicles as well. We're giving them a long blade to use in close combat, as well as a defensive way to protect themselves. They have an ash cloak as well as a sky mantle. And once again, we are spending 60 credits to get Ashwing Helamites for both of them. And we're giving this character hip shooting from the shooting skill tree, from their primary skill tree, so that way they can move twice and open fire with their blast pistol if they need to. Or they can move twice, and potentially it could be argued they could deploy the Ashwing lure, but the Ashwing lure is not really a shooting attack, so that's really up to conjecture on that part. But like I said before, the great thing about this character, of course, is that this is a champion, so they're not as expensive as your Chieftain. We're saving, 150 credits on this character by not making them a leader, but they can also deploy those Ashwing Helamites to lock down a exposed flank or to take an objective of some sort. Like I said before, the only problem with taking Ashwing Helamites is that they can only be used by your characters, so that's one of the problems of it. Plus, this guy is also on foot, so it's a little bit harder for this guy to gain location. Doesn't have any movement shenanigans like the leader did with the infiltrate skill. But if speed is, or be able to move quickly is a concern for you, I do have a solution with our next character. And behold, that character is the Ghost Runner. The Ghost Runner is a Stormcaller Ashwing Handler character. This character costs 235 credits as well. So once again, this guy's got mesh armor for 5 armor save. We're giving this guy a Savage Stub Gun for a short-range shooting attack for a backup weapon. But his primary weapon is going to be a Stormcaller staff, so that way he can call on the storms and cause visibility shenanigans up on the tabletop. And we're also giving this guy 2 Ashwing Helamites as well by spending credits for that. Now, this character automatically comes with the Ash Cloak, but more importantly, this character automatically comes with a Dustback Helamite. And this is where it's actually going to be quite useful for you to to cause problems for enemies. And we give this character the Stormwalker skill from their primary skill tree as well to add 2 inches to the movement allowance. So this guy can now move 10 inches on their Dustback Helamites, so they can move rapidly across the tabletop. And they can also use the Ashwing Helamites to do things like lock down a flank of some sort, or they can use them as a supporting attack as this guy moves across the tabletop, or this guy can move ahead, hold objective real quick, deploy the Ashwing Helamites, and then bounce out real fast. That way they're not located within combat. There's a lot of different things you can do, and we're really utilizing the Stormcaller's speed with their Dustback Helamite to achieve this objective. In my opinion, this is probably the best way that you could probably use Ashwing Helamites, unless of course you're playing in conditions where the Ashways or mounted fighters are not allowed, in which case you just default back to your Ashwing, your Watcher in order to do that as well. Personally though, I believe that mounted fighters like this should be able to fight on foot, but that's just my call as an arbitrator. In fact, in my campaigns, if you have a fighter who is mounted but they have their own set of characteristics, they should be able to fight dismounted or mounted in my opinion, so I allow that in my campaign. Your arbitrator might as well, but if they don't, that's perfectly understandable. After all, it's their campaign. It's their call. So these are 3 examples of some characters that I would recommend for you to use and how to use your Ashwing Helamites to great effect within your Ashways Nomad gang. So now that we're going to talk about exactly how you can equip them in your gang, let's talk about some money-saving ways that you can purchase similar miniatures for your gang without breaking the bank by paying Games Workshop prices. Now don't get me wrong, the Ashwing Helamite miniatures from Games Workshop are absolutely beautiful. Those Citadel miniatures look awesome in my opinion, but they're going to be pricey. I'm just going to admit that right now. Games Workshop, or even worse if it's a Forge World exclusive, will be quite pricey for a lot of players. So if you're looking for a cheaper alternative, I'm your Commander Cheapskate, I'm the guy who does this, so I'll present you an alternative that you can use instead. May I present Reaper Miniatures? They have a line of miniatures that in their Bone Line series, which is made out of printed resin, and they're extremely cheap. Specifically, there's a miniature called the Fly Demon that I'd recommend for you as well. Now, the Fly Demon is to scale. It's about the size of a normal gang fighter, and it sits on a 25mm round base. And here's a picture of it from the website. Unfortunately, the picture's not very good from the Reaper Miniatures website, but that's perfectly fine though, because this thing only costs $3.99 to purchase for one of these things. So if you wanted to max out your number of Ashwing Helamites for your gang, I would suggest you buy 2 of these guys for a grand total of $7.98. Now we're not really sure how much the Ashwing Helamite box set will cost from Games Workshop. If I just had to estimate, I'm just going to estimate $40. I'm just going to assume that. We're going to treat it like it's like a weapons upgrade pack, which is around $35 to $40. So I'm just going to make that happen. And let's assume that the box for the Ashwing Helamites costs $40. Well, the cheaper alternative is only $7.98. You subtract the 2, end up with a grand total savings of $32.02. And then obviously, of course, if the miniatures actually cost more for Games Workshop, then the savings will even be better. Now, of course, as you see in this picture, it's a horribly taken picture, so I'm going to show you an example of what one of these miniatures look like that's painted up. So here's an example of a Reaper Mini Fly Demon that's fully painted. I just found this on Google, just with Google Images, and just download this real quick. As you can see, it sits on a 25mm base, so it is to scale and is in the right size, what I imagine one of these things would look like. And at the same time, even though it may be kind of cheesy looking, you could actually make it really good by just painting it up and being really careful with the way you do it with your paints, and you can save a ton of money doing so. And you can save even more money if you use cheap craft paint like me with like my cheap shot videos. You could definitely save a ton of money with this miniature for your gang. So if you want to add these Ashwing Helamites, but you're kind of concerned about the costs associated with purchasing official miniatures, may I suggest going with other parties like Reaper Minis. I mean, their miniatures are super cheap. They're great to use for a lot, like little one-shot things like this for your gangs, and I can't highly recommend it enough. By the way, I'm not sponsored in any way by Reaper Miniatures. I doubt I'll take any sponsorships because I don't recommend buying expensive stuff. So, but anyways, though, if you're looking for a cheap alternative, this would be a great way to do so. So in conclusion, the Ashwing Helamite is a really cool miniature with some really cool rules for Ashwing Nomad gangs. It's a good way to lock down flanks or to seize objectives and protect them from your enemies as well. And once again, it's nice to see that more giant bugs are going to be in Necromunda as well with the Ashways Nomads. I feel that we really missed out on having giant macro bugs for our Ashways Nomads to ride upon, like giant beetles and stuff like that. I would like to have seen that, but it doesn't look like that's going to come down the pike anytime soon. So until then, we just have to stick with these exotic beasts and use them in your games in Necromunda. And of course, if you can't afford the official miniatures, I may suggest using the Reaper miniatures instead because they're significantly cheaper and they achieve the exact same results on the tabletop anyways. So there you guys have it. These are my thoughts on using the Ashwing Helamites for your games in Necromunda. What are your thoughts? How would you use these in your campaigns? Have you used them in games before? And if so, what kind of experience have you had with them? Please put it down in the comments box down below. I would love to hear your input on these miniatures as well. So I am Commander Cheapskate. That's good for this one, you guys. I will catch you guys next one. Peace out and stay classy.